Then stood the realm in great jeopardy, long while, for every lord that was mighty of men made him strong, and many weened to have been king. Such are the words from Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur in the wake of the death of King Uther Pendragon. Legend has it that in the dark ages of a 5th century Britain, the idea of a kingdom or government, or even any sort of leadership, was a flexible thing. A time lost to history, where feudal lords were many, and any man could call himself king. It was a time of intense poverty, bloody skirmishes, famines and desolation, a ruin of a civilization unceremoniously dumped by the fall of its Roman occupiers. Whilst Uther Pendragon was successful in unifying large portions of Britain, perhaps the only one to have achieved such a thing in a time so rife with chaos, his death saw the law and order of the land plunge once more into unruly uncertainty. With Uther Pendragon gone, Britain became desperate for a new ruler, a ruler which fate aptly supplied, with a little help from a wizard named Merlin. Understanding the urgency of appointing a new king, Merlin went to the Archbishop of Canterbury and convinced him to send all the lords of the realm and their warriors to London, where he claimed they would bear witness to a great miracle, a miracle that would surely determine the next king. Intrigued by this, the Archbishop agreed and sent for the lords and their warriors to come to London. During this time, another great miracle appeared to have taken place. There in a churchyard appeared a great marble stone, and there within the stone appeared to be a sword buried within. And there written on the sword were the words, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king, born of all England." When people began to notice this magnificent sight, they marvelled at it and believed without a doubt that this was a gift from God. The Archbishop in particular was compelled by what he was seeing and commanded everyone to pray inside the church before they investigated the sword in the stone further. Upon reading the inscribed text, we are told that many attempted to yank the sword from the stone, thus signifying themselves as king, but none were able to move it an inch. Evidently, the next king was not amongst those present, and so the Archbishop decreed that any man from the land may try their luck, and encouraged men from far and wide to come and claim their kingship, should they be the one. At some point around New Year's Day, shortly after the appearance of the sword and the stone, a jousting tournament was organised for the arrival of the barons and the lords and all their knights, who came to lift the sword from the stone. Amongst these knights was Sir Ector, his son Sir Kay, and his young adopted brother Arthur, who you may remember was the son of Uther Pendragon, and therefore the true successor of the former king. Arthur, having been placed in Sir Ector's custody by Merlin so as to keep him safe until he was of age, had no knowledge of his royal birthright, and served both Ector and his older brother Kay as dutifully as any son and sibling. Sir Kay, who was intending on participating in the tournament, left his sword behind at his father's lodging, and so tasked Arthur to go and get it for him. Arthur rode hard and fast to retrieve the sword, but when he arrived, he couldn't find it. Determined to get Sir Kay a sword, Arthur rode into the churchyard and considered the hallowed sword in the stone. But it appeared that Arthur did not know of the significance of the sword, and so did not know the greatness of his deed when he pulled the sword from the stone. Sir Kay was stunned by the sword which Arthur had brought to him. Of course, he recognised it straight away, but did not reveal to Arthur what it meant. Instead, he took the sword and went to his father, declaring that it was he who had pulled it from the stone, and that he was now the king of all England. Needless to say, Sir Ector was in awe, but he did not believe it entirely. He rode with Kay and Arthur back to the church, and made Kay swear on the holy book that his account was true. But Sir Kay found that he could not commit to the lie, and ended up telling the truth, that Arthur had brought it to him. Arthur confirms the account and tells of how it was effortless for him, but again Sir Ector doesn't entirely believe what he is hearing. He asks Arthur to place the sword back into the stone and to pull it free again, which Arthur proceeds to do, and just like before, Arthur pulled the sword from the stone. At this point, Sir Ector and Sir Kay fall to their knees before Arthur, for the true king of the realm was finally revealed before them. Baffled by this, Sir Ector proceeds to tell Arthur the truth of his lineage, how he is the son of the late Uther Pendragon, and how he truly is the king of all England. Arthur takes the news pretty well, and doesn't resent the man he believed to be his father for lying to him all these years. He is grateful for Sir Ector for having taken him in at all, and promises to pay him back for his guardianship, making Sir Kay, his foster brother, the governor of all his lands. They then head to the Archbishop and tell him of what has transpired. The sword was placed back into the stone, and despite having the sword on hand, it would appear that the Archbishop wished to waste everyone's time and continue on with the charade, as every knight and baron from the tournament made an attempt to retrieve the sword. It is only when none of them can move the sword does the Archbishop reveal to them that Arthur has already done this, something which he proceeds to demonstrate in front of everyone, thus signifying him as king. But everyone disputed the magnificent feat, for they deemed it a shame that he who had pulled the sword from the stone to become king was nothing but a mere boy. And so it was decreed that the barons would meet again in 2 months at Candlemas. When that time came, the barons were miffed to find that the result was exactly the same. They could not budge the sword even an inch, but Arthur tore the sword from the stone like pulling a weed from the dirt. So instead of conceding, the barons decided they would do this one more time at Pentecost. During this time, Sir Baldwin of Britain, Sir Kay, Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastias, some of which were King Uther Pendragon's most trusted knights, were placed around Arthur as guards. A feast was held at Pentecost, and we are told that men of all manner attempted to pull the sword from the stone, but again, none were successful, except for Arthur. After this third essay, most of those in attendance decided that this must be God's will, and that Arthur definitely was their king. They knelt before him, and Arthur forgave them, before receiving the honours, rights and responsibilities of a true king. We quickly see Arthur thrust into the role of king as he begins to make amends for the errs by his father Uther, and begins to hear the complaints of his people and the great wrongs that had befallen them. Arthur is seen to satisfy those who come to him with their problems, and we understand that he is able to stabilise London and the surrounding areas, ushering in a new era of peace and order. He assigns his knights to various regions for them to take charge, and we learn that Arthur expands his rule into the north, venturing into Scotland. He also claims a part of Wales, and overcomes his enemies through strong leadership and noble prowess. We are also told that whilst in Wales, Arthur held a great feast at Pentecost after his coronation at the city of Karlo. Many attended the great feast, including King Uriens of Gore, King Nentries of Karlo, and the young king of Scotland, as well as many more. Arthur was joyed by their attendance, and they by his, and a great merriment ensued with the exchanging of gifts and songs. But unfortunately, not everyone felt this way. Other self-proclaimed kings in the realm rebuked Arthur's rule, and would not bend the knee before what they deemed to be a beardless boy. These kings would end up sieging Arthur, but the young king and his people were well stocked of resources, and were not urgent to be rid of the rebelling forces. It was Merlin who went out to meet these kings during the siege, and they were relieved to see him, for they believed he would bring about an end to what they believed was madness. Merlin agreed that while he was young, Arthur was the son of the late King Uther Pendragon, and verified that the boy was no bastard, for he was born in wedlock. Merlin goes on to declare that Arthur will rule all of England unanimously, and will take over more regions in Wales and Scotland, those which were too many to list. Some of these kings in attendance heeded Merlin's words, but others scoffed at them, going on to denounce Merlin as a witch. Eventually, an agreement was come to, where Merlin would convince Arthur to come out and speak to the kings himself, so long as his safety could be guaranteed. He told Arthur not to fear, but to go out to these troublesome kings and to speak boldly, for he was their king. Whilst things begin to intensify with Arthur marching out to his keep to face these kings, that's all we have time for on today's episode. Next we'll be speaking about just what Arthur does to deal with these ill-tempered kings and their body of knights, as well as the ensuing wars that take place as Arthur steps up into his role as king. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Until the next time.